The Momodora series has been a relatively unnoticed set of games despite being very charming and tightly designed. Developed by the people at Bombservice, the first two games were freeware games while the third game was their first commercial release. While the series has been somewhat under the radar, this never hindered the developers' passion for the series. Now they have released a new and much more ambitious entry into the Momodora series with Momodora Reverie under the Moonlight, published by Playism and out now on Steam and Bombservice's website. Momodora Reverie puts us in control of Kaho, a priestess from a small village that came to the city of Karst after a curse from said kingdom had begun to affect her homelands. In order to solve the mystery of Karst, Kaho must travel the dangers of the cursed capital and purify the evil spirits that plague the land. The developers are a bit wishy-washy on what the genre of their game is, but they do take pride in saying that there are Souls games and Metroidvania elements in their game. Kaho starts with a double jump, a 3-hit combo, a dodge, and a chargeable bowshot to defend herself from the threats of Karst City, with more abilities slowly unlocked through the plot and many passive abilities from accessories providing extra options. Traversing the land mostly involves various combat encounters with daunting enemies along with a dash of platforming, puzzle solving, and some hidden secrets strewn across the land. Combat's a bit on the simple side with only a small combo and a dodge, but the level and enemy layouts make up for this by demanding full mastery over the game's mechanics to survive. One great thing Momodora Reverie does is design its mechanics to keep a steady pace going. There are many small traits with Kaho's every actions that make combat and exploration very fluid. Your basic combo moves you forward with every hit, dodging lets you move past enemies, your jump attack chains into your double jump for extra fly time, the dash upgrade is speed incarnate, charge shots don't impede your speed or jump heights, it all adds up to a very fluid system. Combat never feels like a waste of time to do this, but rather an organic element of the environment since you don't have to stop in place just to attack. You can keep the pace going while fighting or just ignore certain enemies later on. This does a great job at keeping the player on a brisk pace of exploration while also demanding direct input from the player to survive. This is especially noticeable with boss fights, where the fast-paced nature of the encounter combined with the limited space results in a blur of movements from players just trying to survive. Another interesting thing to discuss is the developers' open admittance to being inspired by From Software's Souls games. Even from the trailer footage, it's easy to see that the developer was at best inspired by those games, and at worst copied certain elements into Momodora Reverie. However, I feel like Bombservice took the right amount of notes from the Souls games and integrated them quite well into their game. A lot of the inspiration can be seen in the general audio-visual direction of the game, combining a very lush and detailed Victorian environment with a mostly ambient soundtrack to convey the sense of isolation and eeriness that comes with Momodora's story. In more defined terms, the developers lifted some of the better elements of the Souls games, namely item restocking linked to checkpoints, maps and shortcuts designed around centric checkpoints, and a very familiar status effect display. While this does give an uncanny feeling to the game, I feel like Bombservice knew what made the Souls games great and consciously tried to integrate their philosophy into Momodora without simply copying the formula. The result is probably the closest thing we'll see to a 2D Souls game, which I personally think is great but could be a deterrent for those that aren't a fan of said series. Now, while Momodora Reverie does a great job at keeping a fluid pace in-game, their menu system is somewhat clunky. While this is going to sound really trite, accessing the map is probably the biggest issue I have with this game. In order to access the map, you need to press either Start or Select, move 2 spaces across the menu, and then press A to access it. This is 4 inputs simply to check your map, something you will be doing quite frequently when first playing the game. Compared to other games of the genre where you need to just press a single button to access the map, this feels like an unnecessary waste of time. This also kills the pacing since each fight will more than often be punctuated by checking the map, which in the case of Momodora Reverie means you will be taking longer pauses than normal. An easy fix for the map issue would be setting a button specifically for accessing the map or just making it the default menu option, both making map access much quicker overall. Another small complaint I have, which is purely a personal grievance, is the amount of freeze frames certain attacks have. It's very cathartic and conveys the weight of many attacks well, but the way I play oftentimes results in frequently using one specific attack with a lot of freeze frames, which wastes a lot of time. Momodora Reverie's visual aesthetic is a very detailed and colorful 2D art style with fluid animations and lush environments, and is definitely the game's strongest assets. The jump in design fidelity compared to Momodora 3 is also quite noticeable when you look at character design and background details, making the game feel much more alive while keeping the whimsical atmosphere of the past games. The music, however, is half ambient noise, half tranquil soundtracks. There's very little high-intensity songs, only ever appearing in the game's boss fights to match the energy of the circumstances. Honestly though, I feel like this hamstrings the game's initial impressions. You spend the first 15 minutes of the game in a forest level where there's no music and purely ambient noise. While this is a sensible and atmospheric decision in general, starting your game with no music and a very calm demeanor can lead to some confusion about the lack of music in-game. The game's writing is very minimalistic, relying on the small dialogues Kaho has with various NPCs along with item descriptions to paint the overall story. They did a better job of writing in this manner than they did with Momodora 3, where they tried something similar but nothing really got resolved. While I found some of the design choices to be strange, Momodora Reverie does a great job at tying all its assets together to provide a charming and whimsical experience. The game engine for Momodora Reverie is nice and light, only taking up roughly 250 megabytes of hard drive space and an unnoticeable amount of RAM. The game supports keyboard and 360 controller inputs, with Sony controllers needing to emulate the Microsoft data to be used. Sadly, there's no key customization. Controllers will have a decent alternate scheme, but neither scheme can be customized to a player's liking. Options are basic, but not bad. Audio has volume sliders, game resolution can be full screen or 1 to 3 times window scaling, and there's a screen shake option for those with motion sickness. One grievance I have though is that with full screen mode, there's a bit of screen tearing on the bottom third of the screen. A minor complaint, but it was ever present throughout the whole game, so it bears mentioning. Nothing really major of note, though I do wish there was a VSync option. Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight really sated my lust for action platforming games. The visual fidelity combined with the free-flowing combat really had me hooked from beginning to end. It's also one of the few games that I strive to 100% complete, which I apparently haven't done so yet since every boss has a no-hit item to get as well. The game is $10 on Steam and is roughly 4 hours at a first playthrough, and possibly quadrupling that if you ever attempt the Insane mode or Pacifist mode playthroughs. With personality in spades and a satisfying level of difficulty, Momodora Reverie Under the Moonlight is one of the big indie gems this year and is a must-buy for pretty much anyone.